Okay, so this is going to be a quick overview of the app and what all these different things do. Now, I will cover this in detail in a separate video, otherwise it's going to make the getting started video a little bit too long, and to be honest with you, a lot of it you don't really need to know. It's just the hang on, I'm going to turn the volume down because it's just constantly telling me I'm in ATE mode. Just take that down, there we go. Can't hear it. So we'll just basically run around. So the first one is clicking on the DJI. That will actually take you back to the start. So we'll go back in and cancel that because we're not going to do a firmware update right now. Here we go. Right, so first one, this one is really just, it's like a status bar. If you have any connection issues, etc., like if it says disconnected and it's a grey bar, you've got connection issues between the tablet and your actual controller. But this is kind of, that's going to go, that's going to turn green when you're ready to go. It will say, you know, ready to fly. But under here, you've got a fair amount of information. So for example, now I need a firmware update. It's going to tell me here. All the information. So for example, it's telling me that I need to download the update. Here it's saying calibration, reset, restart aircraft, because I've just calibrated the compass but I've not restarted the craft, so that's okay. I know about all that. Go back into there. So on here it'll give you lots of statuses, if there's any errors, etc. You've got all your stuff down here. So normal, this is all pretty good stuff. So go back out of there. We go into the next one, which is a little quadcopter logo. This is the one you went into when you were going to do things like compass calibration. So first one we've got is home point settings. So you can select between whether you want the craft to be where it's taken off, which will set that automatically, but you can also have it following the transmitter. Now the only thing to watch out for, unless it's changed, the controller will update its position every couple of minutes. So if you're like on a boat scooting along, then it could end up fail-safing, flying back to your location 2 minutes ago, so watch out for that. Next one down is multiple flight modes. What that enables you is things like sport mode and all the things like active track, etc. If you're a beginner, leave that off. Coming down here, you've got things like your return to home height. So it's preset at 30 meters. You might want to change that if you're flying around some big, large trees. Beginner's mode, again, that was something you had the choice of setting when you first set it up. So if you are in beginner's mode, you can turn it off here. Maximum flight altitude in the UK, we're legally limited to 120 meters, so that's already set. But if you want to break the law, you can actually undo that, but I don't recommend that. And also another one down here, you have got a maximum flight distance. Now that actually should be 500 meters. If I go back, because in UK law, it's visual line of sight. So that should be set to, let's go back to 500. I'll come back to that. So that should be 500 meters. You shouldn't fly out of sight. And then at the bottom one, we had the advanced settings. This is how, there's a lot of stuff in here. If you're not sure, as I say, I'll come back to this in a more detailed video. But you've got things like flight settings, gains, etc. The sensors which we were in. Remote control signal loss, you can tell it whether you want it just to auto land or return to home. Smart return to home, what that means is it will always constantly monitor its distance from the craft to the controller. So further away you fly, the sooner it's going to fly home, because it will always take into account how long it takes to fly home. Next one down, turn the LEDs off. Again, that's for night flying. Watch the night flying one, it's a little bit grey whether it is legal or unlegal. Remember, I'm always going to refer to UK law because that's where we are, and I know in other countries it's completely different. Bottom one, stop motor method. This is what stick command you will give to shut the motor down. Now remembering, all you have to do when you land is to hold the throttle, or the up and down stick, the left hand one, all the way down for 2 seconds, which will shut the motors off. However, if you are say smashed it into a tree or something and the motors are burning out, you want to do a quick shutdown. So you can either have it pulling the sticks in or pulling them all the way out. So you've got that choice there as well. So we'll just go back the way we've done that, so we can close that one down. So that's quick menu. Along the top, this is just like on-screen display flight information. So things like how many satellites you're locked into. Obviously I'm indoors. The crash avoidance seems to be off at the moment. I think that's because we haven't got GPS. The radio strength to the craft, the video transmission strength. This is your battery status. So at the moment my battery's down to 58%. Below it, the little dotted line you'll have there, that will actually come up with your running time, but it only comes up when you're flying, because depending on how you're flying will depend on how much running time you have. However, if you click on that, you've got your full battery status. So that's the voltage in each cells. These should all be fairly level. If they get out, you will get a cell warning. There's no reason for them to get out, but it can happen. And then you'll have things like charge times there, the capacity of the battery, the power in the battery. Down at the bottom here, these are things like your warnings. So you can select a first warning, that's the bottom one, when it will warn you, but it won't act on it. And then the last one is critical warning. So you can set that at what point where the craft will just take control and fly home, and you'll have to cancel it to stop it doing that. And then we've got some advanced settings here. We've got time to discharge. What that is it's always a bad idea to leave your batteries fully charged for any length of time. So you set this depending on when you want them to self-discharge. Now when I say self-discharge, the battery won't get hot in your bag. It takes like a couple of days just to bring it down a little bit. So you can set that here. You've also got a battery history here as well, which will give you all the, basically every time you switch it on and off, you'll get a record. So if you have had an error, you'll know where it's come from. So take that out there. Moving along, we have another tab here. This is like a sort of master menu here. So for example, things like your measurement units, where you want meters per second, miles per hour, etc. Enable hardware decoding, that's a good idea. It can reduce a lot of errors you have between your tablet and your controller. Not sure what the peak threshold is. 1. Enable manual focus, what that is now, I'm going to come back to the focus one because that trips a lot of people up, but it will give you manual focus control. To be honest with you, a lot of these ones I haven't gotten into, and as I say, I'm going to come back to this in a bit deeper, so I'm not going to take too long to do this because it will make the video too long. Show flight route, that's for the map, etc. Geo system, what that is, it will warn you when you're close to airports, etc. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to touch on the ones I think that are important. Moving along, so then what we've got here, this is all your camera settings, what settings you are in. Down here you've got things like auto takeoff, auto land, and then of course things like the specialized flight modes, but I'm not going to go into that because that's advanced stuff. Along the bottom, this is like your heads up display sort of thing, so it'll have things like, you know, speed you're going out, how high you are, how far you are. Down here we've got camera settings, so you can obviously turn from if you're taking photographs, if you're taking video. Here we've got camera settings right across here, so that's all things like image size, proper settings as well, lots of options you can go for. Down here that will take you into all the stuff that you've done, nothing interesting so far. And then down at the bottom we've got our map, so you can have it where it just basically pops up. This is where you'll draw your flight plan when the drone's moving about. So if you're flying around maybe some tall things and you want to know exactly where they are so you don't have to judge the depth of field, this is a good place to do it. And down here we've got a small radar that will show you what, as you move away, it will show you what direction it is to home. Now what I wanted to touch on, I'm actually just going to tilt the camera up a bit, it's about the focus. Now I know, or you probably read, there was loads of folk had problems with this, people having soft pictures and images, etc. And what it was is this, you do actually have to focus the camera on the Mavic. So what you must do is when you're flying, you must touch the point you want it to focus on, and then it will focus on it. So if you don't focus it, this is where people were experiencing a lot of soft images. It simply were that they were not actually focusing the camera. So it's important that when you get up, get a bit of height, focus a point in the horizon if you want, and touch on the thing, and you will get like, it will adjust to infinity, and that will pretty much cover you. But if you're doing some really close-up stuff, then obviously remember to touch on it, otherwise it won't do it. There's also exposure lock there as well, which can be quite handy. I think that's about all I'm going to sort of touch on in the app as well, because that's really the sort of main stuff, without stretching the whole thing out too long. Now we'll have a closer look at the controller, because obviously you've got your main screen, but you've also got the screen on the controller, and I'm going to give you a basic overview of what the controls do again. So first thing we've got across here, a lot of duplicate what's on the main screen. The reason is the main screen can be put into image only mode, so it's got no data on it, so a lot of stuff's backed up here. So first thing you've obviously got is you've got your speed. You have over here the RPM of the motors, if you really needed to know that. This is telling you what flight mode you're in. Now it's in ATI, which is manual mode. That is only because the drone at the moment hasn't got GPS. You've got controller battery there, 79%. This is your communication signal between control and craft. It's giving you main status there, ready to go. Underneath we have a percentage of the craft. There is SD card in, and also the exposure. Now you can control the exposure from the controller, which I will come to. These little bars up here, there's to do with the collision avoidance system, kind of like your reversing sensors on the car. You've got your, that is the electronic eyes on the bottom of the craft that see the ground. That's their signal there. You've got your height, and of course you've got your distance. Now moving on to the actual controls. First one's obviously we've got the main flying controls. So for example, this would be in mode 2. That is giving you height. So going up, going down, we're turning. And here you've got banking left to right and pitching forward and back. This little button here is a pause button. What that's for is when you're flying autonomous flights like waypoints or point of interest, active track, etc. That you hit that button, the craft will just stop dead. So if you're about to basically follow yourself straight into a tree, boom, hit that, you will stop. This is a little customizable toggle here. What this does is you can actually customize this, and I'm just gonna slide my tablet across, because in the menu, and you see what menu there tells you which one, controller, you can fully customize that toggle from things like camera facing up and down, zooming in and out. But if I touch on one of those, you'll actually see the kind of options you've got there. Huge amount of potential for that. So for doing custom setups, etc., that is actually going to be really good. All fully customizable, which is good. So that's what that little joystick does. So I'm just trying to get the glare off that screen. Oh, looks like we've actually started recording. Did you see that there in the middle there? When I hit record, you're going to get a wee record light there, so you know that you're recording. Right, moving into the controls. Obviously we've got our antennas on top, but we've got shoulder buttons here, taking pictures, doing the recording. We've got, sorry, I'm just working upside down, so that is your gimbal tilt, up and down. And this one here is actually your exposure. So if I go back to the main screen, see when I click on that, you'll see the exposure going up and down. That's actually quite handy. The only thing I say, word of warning, when you're looking at your main screen for your exposure, remember your screen brightness may be different to what you actually get. Moving across, obviously we've got home button, return to home. We've got your on-off button, which you should really know because you've turned it on. Obviously on the back, we've got our C1, C2 buttons. They were customizable. On the side, you've got your, this is where the main lightning port is plugged in, but also for charging, as you will already know. Push that back in. And on the side here, we've got sport mode. That is like crazy fast mode. If you're, say, in a heavy wind or you just want to fly for fun, you can flick up into sport mode. Now, this is only available on advanced mode, which I pointed out earlier in the menu. And then kind of flicking up back to the bottom here, you've got a USB in. As you can see, I have got USB in here because I've got my tablet plugged in, which wouldn't obviously connect up to that connection. But obviously that can unplug, and obviously all that can fold back in. Whoops, hitting those buttons. And then obviously to open up your antennas, they just unclip and go like that. Now you should always have them pretty much in that position all the time, as you can see. Yeah, because the way it works with antennas and light bridge is the video signal emanates out like that. So it beams out the side. So never have these antennas pointing at the craft. So if you fly straight above your head up here, you're probably going to get a really weak signal, or you're probably going to lose the signal. So always keep them pointing at the craft. So if you are flying above your head, what I tend to do, drop them down, and then the signal will come out that way as well. So a little bit of a guide through of the actual controller. Now, before it'll actually take off, we're going to need something really important. Boom, we're going to need props. Now, there are two types of props. You've put them next to each other. They're actually a little bit different. So what you've got is, you've got one prop going one way, one going the other. They identify by the little ring. Let me just actually move that up there. We'll see them a bit better. White ring, black ring. And then if I just move, black motor, white motor. So the way that it works is that will obviously go on there. It's pretty straightforward. You shouldn't get it, but it won't work the other way. And the way it works is these little cams will want to fit into these little facets. So just pop that over, line it up with the slots, and as I said before, when we were taking them off, see it springs down. So it's just a case of pushing it down all the way, just sliding it up, and then what I do is I push down like that and then turn your finger, the motor with your other fingers, and it will come up. Now, always grab the motor, grab the prop, give it a wiggle. You don't want that just to clip and then fly out. So you've got obviously your white motor to do, and we'll just swing that round, pop that down again, prop it down, twist the motor and lock it in. Now, let's face it, you're going to be leaving the props on and on all the time. I only had them off because I was doing all my calibrations and stuff and just didn't want to take any chances. So we can lock all them into place. But obviously if you are a crazy pilot, you might actually break your props. Now remember, if you do damage a prop, don't take the chance, just replace it. I mean, if you've got scratches on your props, that's okay, but if you've chunked it out, I would take it off, because remember, it's a quadcopter, it will not fly on 3 props. And if you lose one of these half props, the vibration will be absolutely incredible on that leg, and it will just knock the craft out of the sky. Now, the props are foldable. You'll probably see a lot of videos of people leaving them folded in and then firing the engines up and they just fly out. Yes, they will do that, but it's not really necessary to put a bit of side load on the motor every time you start it up. So when you do fold your arms out, so if you've got it on like that and then you go fold it out, when you go to fly, best just, you know, pull the props out. It takes 2 seconds, and then that way there's no side load. Okay, I'm just going to have a quick overview of the craft. Although we've covered most of it, there's a couple of bits we haven't. So we know pretty much how to charge it up, how to set it up and fly it, but I'm just going to go over the parts. So obviously we have one camera, we know about this. These are the crash avoidance sensors, so keep them clean. Now it only has crash avoidance on the front, so don't think you can pan sideways, it will hit something. Know your limitations. The sensors don't see things like thin wires, maybe small branches without leaves, etc. Even leaves can sometimes be a bit of a tall order, so watch out for stuff like that. Moving around the side, up there, we've got a little door here. We'll just pull that down. And we have a little USB socket in there. That will be for doing things like updates via the Assistant 2 software. Again, I will cover that on another video. And then on the other side, this is kind of important, because in here, see in here, now you're going to have a bit of nail to do this. Good thing is these doors are on little flaps, so you won't lose them. So in there, you see we've got more stuff. We've got our SD card, comes pre-fitted with a Panasonic. It used to be Lexar. I don't know why they've gone over to Panasonic, because to be honest with them, as much as I love Panasonic, the Lexar ones are better. So SD card there, and then see the little switch. That won't go out of focus as I get closer. There you go. That little switch there, what that does is it flicks it from being, well, basically radio controlled to Wi-Fi controlled, because although just now the Mavic's only available with the controller, you will eventually be able to buy it without a controller and then use your smartphone completely to do the control. Now it will be limited to the range of your smartphone. I'll be honest with you, I'm not a big fan of craft that fly off controllers, because I like the physical feel of sticks, but that is what that is for, so you can flick from one to the other. And just for your curiosity as well, if you do decide to fly it off your phone, what will happen is the craft will basically become a Wi-Fi network your phone will connect to. Inside leg is actually your Wi-Fi password in there, so if you wonder where it is. On the bottom, We've got our sensors up here. We've got ultrasonics there, that is for height, and then these ones are optical sensors for measuring the movement of the ground. So that is when you're flying indoors and you don't have GPS, but also when you're close to the ground, what that will do is that will give you more stability. But the main thing is there, it allows you to fly indoors with almost the feel of having incredibly accurate GPS. So when you're flying in tripod mode, which is what that does is it dulls all the controls right down and allows the model, so if you give huge amounts of stick command, the craft will move very little, and that's all getting done, the accuracy of it is getting done by these sensors. Now this whole part here is actually metal. This will get warm because there's lots of stuff going on in here, and you'll hear the fan. You probably heard in parts of the video the fans coming on, and that's to keep all this cool. So that's a massive heatsink. That's all metal, which is quite good, and I have to say it's really well made. And then of course we've got LEDs on the front. These are status LEDs, and we've also got the main status LED. Sorry, they're not status LEDs, I meant to say that. They're just like navigation lights. They don't change colour. But on the back we do have a status light. So for example, low batteries and all that. Well, I mean, you're going to be warned in your controller anyway, but old school guys probably still like to see things like lights here changing colour, etc. So that's a basic run through of the actual drone, and you're pretty much actually ready to fly. So I'm just going to go over some quick stick commands to basically do that. Well, that concludes another how-to video on the new Mavic Pro. Once I've had a bit more flying time on it, I will do more individual videos on specific things. I'll also do a video on how I've been getting on with my Mavic. I hope you find these video tutorials helpful. You can support me and my channel by purchasing through the links that are down in the comments. So there'll be a link to my store if you're here in the UK, and there'll be an affiliate link to DJI if you're outside of the UK. So until the next video, I bid you goodbye. Thank you very much.